Hi, this is my 10-minute chess lessons for beginners. In this lesson, we're going to cover openings. Now, if you are playing without strategy, ideas, and principles, you're a beginner, and you probably aren't doing very well in the opening. The opening consists of a number of basic chess principles identified as controlling the center, developing your pieces towards the center, not moving an already developed piece until all your pieces are developed, getting your king into a safe position, which means castling, either king side or queen side. For a beginner, most of the time you will be castling to the king side because it's your quickest, safest castle. And after you've developed all of your pieces, have your king into a safe position, then developing a plan for the middle game. Now, in order to do that, you have to have strong tactical ideas and ability, which we've already covered in one of our 10-minute lessons, and I even gave you a drill to increase your ability to recognize tactical patterns. Once you can recognize those quickly, you can start to develop an even better plan. But for this video, we're looking at opening ideas and strategies. Again, control the center of the board, usually by placing either the king pawn or the queen pawn in the center of the board. Develop your pieces. You want to develop them towards the center with the plan of controlling center squares, which means e4, e5, d4, d5, and the squares that touch those four squares. Once all your minor pieces are developed, you want to put your king into a safe position, which means castling early in the game. Don't wait to castle, because very often you wait to castle, then you find out you can no longer castle. Your king is stuck in the center of the board, which makes him exposed to attack either from the left or right side or from straight in the center. If you place your king in a castle position, especially on the king side, then your opponent is going to have to develop his pieces to the king side in order to attack you. Develop your queen or select a strategic spot for your queen once your minor pieces are developed. Now, I know you look at these master games and grandmaster games, you say, oh, he moved a piece more than once. Well, that's because he's a grandmaster or a master. That's because he is not a beginner. And once you are no longer a beginner, you can make these plans that violate the basic ideas and strategies of chess, but that's okay. That's the beauty of chess, that you can violate those principles once you have a solid plan and a valid idea to do so. You can't violate the rules just because you want to and still win. Okay, let's go through them for the third time very quickly. Make moves in such a way to gain control of the center, which very often means on your very first move, either move pawn to e4 or pawn to d4. If you're playing white, if you're playing black, you want to move pawn to d5 or pawn to e5. Develop your minor pieces quickly and develop them towards the center, which means knight, if you're playing white, knight to f3 or knight to c6. If you're playing black, that means knight to f6 or knight to c6. I think I said that wrong. If you're playing white, it's f3 or c3. Develop your bishops behind those knights. Get your king castled. Your rooks belong on open files, usually towards the center of the board. Your queen, you have to make a plan which will involve a decision of where you want that queen placed. Very often, one of the mistakes that beginners make is constantly moving their queen back and forth here and there for no particular reason at all. You're just wasting tempos. Your opponent develops, and you end up losing your queen because you're moving her all over the place. Which leads to another idea. It's a little more advanced, but seems appropriate for right now. If your opponent developed his queen early, look at where you can continue to develop your pieces and attack his queen. If you can attack his queen while developing your pieces, that means all your pieces are going to be developed and his queen is just going to be bouncing around. I think I've covered many of the opening ideas, at least the opening ideas for a beginner. So now I need to give you some type of information for how you develop these ideas. Well, my most important, your most important training assistant will be an app on your phone. Any chess app will do. I use Shredder myself. It's only maybe $4 or $5, if anything at all. It might even be free. I don't know. But you use your phone or your computer to practice your game. All these softwares or apps have different levels of play. Put it at the, if you have a pretty good one like Shredder, it has ratings. So you put it at your 1200 rating. This thing is playing at beginner's level, which means it's not developing its pieces very well, is not protecting its pieces very well. And after you've put some study time, especially if you take time to practice all those drills relating to tactics that we talked about in the other video, you'll be able to beat it at 1200. Then move it up to 1300, 1400, so on and so forth. If you actually apply these opening ideas, you'll be able to beat it that much quicker. But you need a foundation of tactics, and you need solid opening ideas that you can actually apply and play. Now, I've told you what those ideas are, but it's a lot harder to actually apply them in your games without having seen it applied before. And Shredder will give you the opportunity to play. There's another application out there. It's only $4 or $5, or you can get the software, which is actually a couple of $100. It's ChessBase. I wish I had my phone nearby, I could be certain, but I'm pretty sure it's ChessBase. And one of the areas within that ChessBase is openings. You can click on there, you can see openings. It'll give you all the different openings that apply. Now, as a beginner, you only want to see the first 3, 4, 5 moves of an opening, and then think about the opening strategies that we have just talked about and see if you can identify where they're being applied at. In addition to that, we're going to go through a couple of basic openings at this point in the video. I hope it helps. Okay, we've already discussed basic opening principles. Now let's look at those opening principles in action. Well, your basic principles: occupy the center with at least one pawn. That's what white is doing. Black's response is also occupy the center with at least one pawn. He chose to go pawn to e5. He could have went pawn to d5 as well, which would have been a center counter. White continues developing with the knight to f4. This is a very common move. And it not only develops a piece, but also attacks black's pawn at e5. Now, black's response could be pawn to d6, pawn to f6, or knight to c6. Which of those moves supports our basic opening principles? Not d6, because you really are not developing a piece, even though you are potentially developing the queen bishop, but you're also blocking in the king bishop. Pawn to f6, that breaks our basic principles, because not only are you not developing a piece, but you're also hindering the knight from coming to his natural square. Knight to c6 protects the pawn and develops a piece. So to support our basic opening principles, the appropriate move in this position would be knight to c6. White continues developing, develops the bishop, and prepares the castle to the king's side. Black also develops the bishop. Not quite ready to castle because the knight is still on g8. This opening is considered the Gaccho's piano, or I think this is the Italian game. White castles. Black develops his knight to f6 and is now prepared to castle to the king's side. Pawn to d3 prepares to develop the queen's bishop along that diagonal. d6 also prepares to develop the bishop along the diagonal. White not only develops his bishop, but also restricts the black knight because it's pinned to the black queen. That's referred to as a relative pin, as opposed to an absolute pin, which means the knight can actually move, but would not be a good idea because he would lose his queen. Black develops his bishop along the diagonal, actually challenging White's bishop. White has to decide whether he wants to exchange the bishops or continue his development. White decides to continue his development. Now Black has an option. If he takes off the White bishop, he can slightly hinder the White pawn structure, or he can continue his development. He decides to continue his development by allowing himself to be able to castle. Apparently Black wants to castle along the queen's side because he has a plan. His plan is to castle along the queen's side, shift his king to b8, and then try to initiate attack against White's king, which is castled on the king's side. White continues his development by going queen to d2, which connects the rooks and allow the rooks to play along the first rank. And you want to place your rooks on the files that you think will become open, either because you force them open, because your opponent is getting ready to force it open. Black indeed does castle to the queen's side. Now you notice the extra pawn at a7 that sooner or later is going to have to be protected, usually by the king, if Black wants to be able to freely play his knight at c6. Okay, I don't think that's one of the opening moves. That's actually a really bad move. That just loses a piece. Let's go back. Okay, both kings are castled. All the pieces have been developed. The rooks are connected, so you would transition from here into the middle game, and you need an actual plan of how you want to approach the middle game. And you will also be looking for tactics where your opponent has gone wrong, or where you would be going wrong if you did not check your moves, as well as the position for tactics. Okay, that's one of the ways that your pieces could be developed in adherence to the basic opening principles.